The traffic light turned red, and the honking started like an orchestra of impatience. In the middle of that chaos, a loud, impatient voice cut through everything. "Hey! Move that piece of junk out of the way! You're blocking my Bentley!" The man shouting was Cameron Hale, a tall, sharply dressed executive with a face that always carried a smirk, like the world owed him respect. Behind the wheel of his silver Bentley, he looked like a man born to never hear the word no. The man he was yelling at? A bus driver named Raymond, old, tired, wearing a faded uniform and holding onto a steering wheel that rattled whenever the bus turned. His vehicle coughed smoke, and the air brakes hissed like a tired sigh. Raymond leaned his head slightly out the window. "Sir, I can't move. The light's red. You'll have to wait." Cameron slammed his palm on the steering wheel. "Wait. Do you know who you're talking to? I don't wait for people like you." He leaned on the horn again, long and sharp, just to humiliate the man in front of everyone. Pedestrians began to stare. Raymond lowered his eyes and took a deep breath. "Then you can go around me if it bothers you that much." Cameron laughed. "Go around you? That's the problem with people like you. Always giving excuses. You drive buses because you can't do anything better." The words hit Raymond like a slap, but he didn't answer. He just sat there quietly as the light turned green, released the brake, and started to move. But Cameron wasn't done. He drove his Bentley up beside the bus, rolled down his tinted window, and shouted for everyone to hear, "Enjoy your minimum wage, buddy. I'll be flying to Dubai tomorrow. You'll still be driving this tin can." The bus passengers looked uncomfortable. Some shook their heads. One young girl whispered, "Why do rich people act like that?" Raymond didn't respond. He had learned long ago that people who flaunted power often had the weakest hearts. Still, as he pulled the bus to the next stop, something about that man stuck with him. He didn't know why, but his gut whispered, "You'll see him again." That evening, Cameron drove home to his glass-walled mansion on the hills. The kind of place that glowed at night like a trophy. Inside, everything screamed success. Golden accents, a private bar, walls lined with framed magazine covers where his face smiled next to the words, "The Self-Made King." But behind the confidence was something no one saw: debt. A mountain of it. He had stretched his empire too thin: loans, risky deals, silent investors waiting to collect. Still, he refused to stop the image game. He believed appearance was everything. So when his assistant, Melissa, called that night and said, "Sir, the board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow," he didn't even flinch. "Let them wait. I'll arrive when I want." The next morning, he walked into that meeting like he owned the place. But the air was heavy. The investors were silent. Papers were laid out in front of them. Melissa spoke softly. "Cameron, they found out about the offshore accounts. The audit came back." Cameron's smile froze. "What audit?" An older man across the table leaned forward. "You forged revenue reports, Mr. Hale. You used company money for personal expenses. It's over." He laughed nervously. "You think you can fire me? I am this company." The man said coldly, "Not anymore." Security entered. In that moment, Cameron's voice broke. "You can't do this. You know who I am." But the world had stopped caring who he was. 3 months later, the Bentley was gone. The mansion, foreclosed. The accounts, frozen. Cameron sat on a cracked couch in a one-room apartment, surrounded by empty takeout boxes and unpaid bills. His phone buzzed with messages from debt collectors. One said, "Final notice, car repossession complete." He tossed the phone aside and buried his face in his hands. How did it come to this? He hadn't spoken to his so-called friends in weeks. No one returned his calls. The same people who once begged to be seen with him now ghosted him. He took a job search flyer off the floor, anything to bring in money. His eyes scanned through delivery driver, construction worker, and then city transit hiring, bus operators needed. Training provided. He stared at it. At first, he laughed bitterly. Then his laugh faded. He thought about the rent he couldn't pay, the silence in his empty apartment, the food running out, and slowly his pride broke. He whispered to himself, "Bus driver. I guess I'll take it." That Monday morning, Cameron stood in line at the transit depot, surrounded by men and women in faded uniforms. Some were older, some young, some just surviving. He looked around uncomfortably. "This isn't me," he muttered. "This can't be me." But when the supervisor handed him the training packet and said, "Welcome aboard," Cameron forced a smile. He was now the thing he once mocked. And fate wasn't done with him yet, because when he climbed into the bus for the first time, he froze. Behind the wheel of the bus, next to his lane, was Raymond, the same man he humiliated that day in traffic. Raymond looked at him, just for a second, and smiled calmly. "Small world, huh?" Cameron's throat tightened. He couldn't answer. And that's when karma finally took the driver's seat. The sound of the engines roared through the depot that morning. Buses pulling in, others leaving, drivers greeting one another with tired smiles. But for Cameron, it all felt like another world. The smell of diesel, the sight of grease-stained uniforms, the faint chatter of blue-collar banter, it was everything he once looked down on. He climbed into his assigned bus, gripping the metal rails like they might bite him. The seat was cracked, the steering wheel stiff. When he looked into the rear-view mirror, he barely recognized himself. No tailored suit, no luxury watch. Just a plain gray uniform and a faded cap that didn't quite fit. "Need help adjusting the mirrors?" The voice came from behind. Cameron turned to see Raymond, the same man he'd mocked months ago. He stood there in full uniform, holding a cup of coffee, calm as always. Cameron hesitated. "No, I got it." Raymond nodded, not offended, not smug. Just understanding. "Well, first day's always the toughest. If you need help with the route, I'll be around." Cameron mumbled something like, "Thanks," but his pride choked the word before it could sound human. When the horn signaled departure, Raymond climbed into his bus next lane over, while Cameron awkwardly started his. His hands trembled slightly as the vehicle groaned forward. The passengers didn't care who he used to be. They just wanted to get to work. Some talked loudly, some stared at their phones, others dozed off. For the first time in years, Cameron was invisible. And that invisibility burned. By lunchtime, Cameron's shirt clung to his back with sweat. He'd missed 2 stops, gotten yelled at by an old lady, and spilled coffee on his lap. When he finally parked at the depot for his break, he saw Raymond sitting under a tree, eating a simple sandwich. Cameron sat a few benches away, exhausted. Raymond glanced at him and smiled. "Rough day." Cameron didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "I don't think I can do this." Raymond chuckled softly. "I said the same thing my first week. Thought I'd quit. But you get used to it. Life humbles you, then teaches you." Cameron looked up. "You enjoy this? Driving all day, people yelling, traffic everywhere." Raymond nodded. "I do. Because at least it's honest. You serve people. You see faces, hear stories. You realize, we're all carrying something." Cameron scoffed lightly. "Yeah, well, I carried a company once." Raymond didn't react. He just took a sip of water and said, "And now you carry people. Doesn't make you less valuable. Just different." Those words stuck. That night, when Cameron returned to his small apartment, he found himself replaying Raymond's tone, not mocking, not smug, just peaceful. He stared at the ceiling, whispering, "How can he be okay with this life? After all I lost. Why can't I be?" Weeks passed. Cameron slowly learned the routes, the brakes, the rhythm of the job. He learned that some passengers always sat in the same seats. The old man who read the newspaper every morning. The mother with 2 kids who waved thank you. The teenager who rapped quietly to himself. They started recognizing him too. "Hey, morning, driver. Thanks for waiting at the light." Each small moment softened something in him. One morning, Raymond approached him at the depot. "You're getting better. The passengers like you." Cameron laughed slightly. "Yeah, maybe I'm improving. Never thought I'd say that about driving a bus." Raymond smiled. "Pride's a funny thing, huh?" Cameron looked down. "Yeah. It can make you blind." There was a pause. Raymond asked gently, "What were you before this?" Cameron hesitated. His instinct was to lie. But for once, he didn't. I owned a company. Tech investments. I thought I was unstoppable. Then, everything fell apart. I lost everything. Raymond nodded, still calm. I figured something like that. Cameron frowned. You did? Yeah, Raymond said softly. The way you looked at people the first day. Like you were afraid they'd see you as less. That's usually what happens when life flips the mirror. Cameron's throat tightened. Did you ever go through something like that? Raymond smiled faintly. You could say that. He looked out toward the city skyline. Used to be a factory manager. Had over 100 workers under me. Then the plant closed. I was too proud to take a smaller job. Lost my home. My wife left. Drove this bus out of desperation. But somewhere along the way, I found peace in it. Peace? Cameron asked quietly. Yeah, Raymond said, standing up. Because once you stop trying to prove yourself to the world, you finally meet yourself. The next few weeks, Cameron started changing without realizing it. He began greeting passengers with small smiles, helping an elderly lady with her groceries, waiting an extra minute for a late runner. He didn't see it, but Raymond did. One day, a young boy boarded the bus holding a soccer ball. His face lit up when he said, "You're the cool driver who waves back." Cameron chuckled. "Guess I am." When the boy got off, an old woman sitting near the front said softly, "You've got a good heart, son. Don't lose it." Cameron blinked. Compliments used to come from magazine articles or investors. Now they came from strangers, and somehow they meant more. But fate wasn't done testing him yet. One evening, after a long shift, Cameron was driving back to the depot when a sleek black car suddenly swerved in front of his bus and stopped. He hit the brakes hard, the passengers jolting forward. The driver stepped out, expensive suit, shiny shoes, and started yelling, "Are you blind? You almost hit my car." Cameron froze. That voice, that tone, that arrogance. It was like watching an old version of himself. The man continued shouting, "People like you shouldn't even be allowed to drive. Look at this bus. It's disgusting." The passengers murmured angrily. One woman shouted back, "He didn't do anything wrong." Cameron stepped out calmly, looking the man in the eye. "I'm sorry, sir. But you stopped in the lane. I couldn't avoid it." The man scoffed. "You're sorry? You know who I am." Cameron smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think I do." He looked at the man, his designer watch, the false confidence hiding behind anger, and suddenly realized he wasn't angry. He just felt pity. He whispered, "Take care of yourself," then walked back into the bus. The passengers clapped quietly. One said, "You handled that well, driver." Cameron smiled. "Thanks. I used to be him once." Later that night, at the depot, Raymond walked up beside him. "Heard what happened. You handled it like a pro." Cameron laughed softly. "Guess I learned from the best." Raymond patted his shoulder. "Nah, you just learned from life." Then Raymond looked thoughtful. "Funny thing, isn't it? The people who look down on others usually fall the hardest. But when they get back up, they're different." Cameron nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally understand that." He looked at the buses lined up under the streetlights, tired, dented, still running. Maybe that's what we all are. Just buses. We carry people, we break down, we get fixed, and we keep going. Raymond chuckled. That's one way to see it. But something in Cameron's voice that night, calm, humble, told Raymond karma had done its job halfway. What neither of them knew was that karma wasn't finished yet. Because soon, an unexpected moment was going to test Cameron's growth, in the most unexpected way. It was an early Monday morning when the sky hung gray over the city, and the streets were slick with rain. Cameron parked his bus in the depot lot, rubbing his hands together to fight the cold. His shift had just started, and despite the weather, something about the morning felt peaceful. He'd grown used to the rhythm now, the smell of fuel, the chatter of passengers, the sound of doors hissing open and closed. For the first time in years, he felt content. Raymond waved from across the lot. "Morning, partner." "Morning," Cameron replied, smiling as he adjusted his uniform cap. Raymond laughed. Look at you. You even wear the cap straight now. Proud of the job. Cameron shrugged with a grin. Maybe a little. You've come a long way, Raymond said, sipping his coffee. You were angry at the world when you started. Now look at you. People actually like your route. Cameron smiled. I like it too. Guess I needed to lose everything to find something real. Raymond nodded, his eyes soft. Sometimes, you gotta break to rebuild. That day, Cameron's route took him across the business district, a cruel irony, since he used to work in one of those shiny towers. As the bus passed by the glass buildings, he caught a reflection of himself in one of them. No suit, no watch, just a man doing his job. And yet, for the first time, he liked that reflection. At one stop, a group of school kids boarded, laughing and shouting. One little girl tripped on the steps, dropping her backpack. Cameron bent down, picked it up, and smiled. You okay there, champ? She nodded shyly. Thank you. Her mother, who looked exhausted from working nights, smiled gratefully. God bless you. When they got off later, the little girl waved. Bye, Mr. Bus Driver. Cameron waved back. Something warm stirred in his chest, a kind of joy he never felt in boardrooms or luxury cars. That evening, as he parked at the depot, Raymond wasn't there. Usually, he'd be waiting, ready with a joke or a story. Cameron waited an hour. Then 2. Finally, another driver approached him. You didn't hear? Raymond collapsed during his last route. They rushed him to Mercy Hospital. Cameron's heart dropped. What? The man nodded. They said it was his heart. Without a word, Cameron ran out of the depot, caught a taxi, and headed straight to the hospital. When he arrived, he found Raymond lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors. His breathing was shallow but steady. Cameron sat beside him. Hey, old man. Raymond opened his eyes slowly and smiled. You came. Of course I did, Cameron said quietly. You scared me. Raymond chuckled weakly. Guess I ran out of fuel. Don't talk like that, Cameron said, gripping his hand. Raymond looked at him for a long moment. You're a good man, Cameron. I knew it from that first day, even when you didn't. Cameron shook his head. I wasn't. I was selfish. Arrogant. I treated you like nothing. Raymond smiled faintly. And now you treat people with respect. That's all that matters. Tears welled up in Cameron's eyes. You changed me. Raymond coughed lightly. No. Life did. I just reminded you who you were before you forgot. Days passed, and Raymond's condition worsened. The doctors said his heart was failing and he needed rest. Cameron visited him every evening after his shift. Sometimes they didn't even talk, they just sat in silence, listening to the hospital hum. One night, Raymond said softly, I want you to promise me something. Anything. Keep driving. Don't quit when I'm gone. Cameron swallowed hard. Don't say that. I mean it, Raymond whispered. Drive that bus like you're carrying something more than people. Carry their stories, their struggles, their hope. That's what this job really is. Cameron nodded, fighting tears. I promise. A week later, Raymond passed away peacefully in his sleep. Cameron stood by his grave in the soft drizzle, holding his cap against his chest. No one from his old life was there, no board members, no fake friends. Just a handful of fellow drivers and a silence heavy enough to break hearts. Cameron whispered, You were right. We're all just carrying something. But some of us learn to carry it better than others. He left the funeral with a strange mix of grief and gratitude. Months went by. Life rolled on like the steady hum of an engine. Cameron became one of the most respected drivers in the depot. People admired his patience, his calmness. Some even called him Ray's student. But one morning, fate turned the wheel again. As he drove through the city, Cameron noticed a familiar man standing at a bus stop, disheveled suit, briefcase in hand, staring nervously at the ground. When the man looked up, Cameron's eyes widened. It was his old investor, Mr. Langford, one of the people who had once laughed as they kicked him out of his company. Langford froze too. He looked shocked, ashamed, even scared. Cameron opened the door. You getting in or not? Langford hesitated. I didn't think that I'd be driving, Cameron said calmly. Neither did I. But here we are. Langford stepped on board, avoiding eye contact. He sat in the back quietly. As Cameron drove, the irony sank deep. This man once had the power to destroy him. Now Cameron was the one taking him where he needed to go. When the bus reached Langford's stop, the man stood up. Listen, Cameron. I'm sorry. For everything. Cameron nodded slowly. I know. Langford swallowed. If there's ever anything I can do. There is, Cameron interrupted softly. Be kind to people on your way up. You'll meet them again on your way down. Langford blinked, speechless. Cameron smiled faintly and said, Take care. The man stepped off the bus, and the doors closed behind him with a hiss, like a curtain falling on an old chapter. That night, Cameron sat alone in the depot, staring at the empty buses lined up in the dark. For the first time, he truly understood karma. It wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. He whispered to himself, Maybe I had to lose everything to earn something better. He looked at Raymond's old locker, still untouched, a small photo of him taped inside. Cameron smiled and placed his cap beside it. Rest easy, old man. You were right. Life doesn't drive in circles. It drives in lessons. The next morning, Cameron started his shift like always. As he opened the bus doors, sunlight spilled in, warming the cold metal floor. A little boy climbed aboard and said, Hey, Mr. Bus Driver. My mom says you're the nicest one. Cameron chuckled. Tell your mom I said thank you. He started the engine, looked at the road ahead, and for once, he didn't think about the past, or what he'd lost. He just drove. Because now, he understood, the real journey wasn't about where you go. It was about who you become getting there. Subscribe to Residential Stories, where real stories meet real lessons, because sometimes, karma doesn't punish, it teaches.